Guys, welcome Akeem Shannon to the Small Business Catalyst show. And I want you to know that at the end of today's episode, you would learn the power of storytelling, the impact of telling your story to the right audience, and also the impact of affiliations on your revenue. So today we're going to learn how to use storytelling to grow our revenue and also to reach the right affiliations. So Akim, tell us a little bit about yourself. Your story is just so wild, so inspiring, that I feel like our audience needs to hear it from you.
Of course, of course. So, I'll give you the short version because I can go on for about 3 hours. I don't think anyone has that long of a commute. But yeah, my story for me started when I lost my college scholarship. I had a full ride scholarship to go to Howard University, study chemical
Wow.
engineering, and about 3 semesters in, I lost it, and I had to come home, and it was devastating. My parents were so disappointed. I was so disappointed, and I really had to start over. And so I had to ask myself, well, what is my story going to be? Am I going to be the person that is living in their parents' basement and total failure, or am I going to write a different story? And so I made myself this promise when I got home that by the time my friends graduated college, I wanted to be making more than the average college graduate. That was my
Woo-hoo!
only thing I wanted to do. And
I
so,
love that.
and so over the course of the next 3 or 4 years, I ended up becoming the number one sales rep at not one, but two Fortune 500 companies. And I ended
Awesome.
up saving up nearly $100,000. And so,
Wow.
after going through this whole process, I remember I was working at Verizon, and they had this big contest called Verizon Rockstar, which was like a pitch competition of all the Verizon services. And I
Yes.
end up winning this entire competition. I get to go down to Miami at the Fountain Blue Hotel. Just amazing. I meet these celebrities. I meet all the executives from the company. And here I am, this kid who a few years earlier, was an absolute failure. That was my story. And now I had completely turned it around. And for me, it just showed me like, wow, when you don't give up, you can write a new story. It's never too late. And when people check out
Absolutely.
like my website, they'll see I have this branding called Becoming Invincible. And I think that when you realize that you're never at the end of your story, you always
Yes.
have the opportunity to continue to become invincible. Even if you haven't gotten to that invincibility yet,
Yes.
you always have the opportunity. And so
So
that's how my story in entrepreneurship began.
there's something you glossed over. You had a goal that when your fellow classmates were graduating, you would be making as much, if not more. You glossed over something. Your friends graduated probably with $100,000 or more in debt. You had saved up almost $100,000
Mm,
in
yeah,
just savings. I mean,
yeah,
that is not an equal playing field. You turned
no,
what could have been an adverse into an amazing advantage.
yeah.
Hats off to you.
And I remember thinking to myself, like, man, I have no debt, and so I didn't have stuff to spend money on. I was just saving. And I was cheap, I didn't spend any money. And,
Wow.
for me, it was just one of those things where I think for my own sense of pride, because I knew I wasn't going to have a degree, I was like, I needed to have something. And
Yes.
so for me, like having that success, in the workplace and having a banking account, investment account that reflected that, was for me, that was my, college degree. That was my diploma to prove like, oh, I'm capable.
That's a huge win. So I have a few questions for you to kind of help our audience just learn more. You guys, I don't want to like give it away, but I can't help it. You are an inventor, but there were a few steps that got you there. You invented the Flipstik, which I have a copy of, and I actually got one for my
Yeah.
daughter as well. Yay! Woohoo! So, guys, Akim did not only just turn an adverse opportunity, an yeah, I guess everything is an opportunity, right? An adverse opportunity into something amazing. It went on to do so much more. So tell our audience how storytelling impacted your career and business.
Yeah, I remember I was working for a big fintech company, and it was, it was a startup. It was paying me very well, with great benefits. Everything was great, but I just knew at the times like this just doesn't feel like my story anymore, right? I had been in sales at that point for maybe like 7 or 8 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I just wanted to do something else. And I really had like this belief that I could go out and do my own business, right? I had this belief in myself. I've been working with entrepreneurs at this fintech company, and I just knew I could go out and do something on my own. And so I leave the job and plan to start a business. I start off in marketing, and I realized pretty quickly I didn't like doing marketing. I was like, you know what? I don't like marketing for other people.
What?
I'm not getting paid hardly any money to market for other people. I don't like this. And so, luckily at that time, my boss had given me a book, and I didn't read the book, but I knew I should have read the book. And the book was called The Alchemist. And,
Mm.
even though I didn't read the book, I started hearing about this book everywhere. Like I would be on the internet and I would hear it was back on the bestsellers list. I would watch a video, and I remember I was watching this video when it was Oprah interviewing Pharrell, and she's asking him, "Oh, Pharrell, what's your favorite book that you just love that changed your life?" And he's like, "Oprah, the book that changed my life is called The Alchemist." And she's like, "Oh, I love The Alchemist. It changed my life too." Now I should have read the
Wow.
book, but I still didn't read it. Okay, so like I keep hearing about it, and then finally I end up moving to a new apartment, and I had stuff everywhere, boxes, and I look on my counter in this new apartment, and there's this book. And it's not the book my boss had given me, right? He
Hmm.
had given me this beautiful hardback copy of The Alchemist and with illustrations inside. Instead, what
Wow.
I find on my counter is this paperback tattered book, but it's The Alchemist.
What?
And I freak out because I'm like, where did this book come from? My buddy was helping me move. I'm like, where did this book come from? And literally in the middle of moving, I just stop everything. I read this book cover to cover. And in
Wow.
this book, it's a story of a boy who goes on a journey to find his treasure. He has a dream about his treasure and where he can find it. And he decides to go and pursue this treasure. And early on in his journey, he learns the meaning of omens or signs from the universe. And he gets told that when you want something, the entire universe will conspire to help you achieve your dream. And it was with that mindset that I started this journey to create Flipstik. I ended up getting a phone call from my uncle, who's an engineer at NASA, and he told me about a project he was working on for the Space Launch System and how he was going to use this gecko-based adhesive to mount wiring behind paneling. And since I had just moved, I was looking at my TV and thinking, man, could have saved myself a lot of time with this magic
Yes.
adhesive if I could have mounted it with this gecko adhesive. And while I never mounted a TV, we did figure out a way to mount a phone to a wall. And that's
Wow.
where the idea for Flipstik was born. And it was really one of those things where the story I was telling myself in my mind at that time was that the universe will come together so that I can find my dream and my passion. And it was with
Wow.
that mindset that I had that phone call. Otherwise, it would have went in one ear, out the other. We've all had, right, those moments where,
Oh yeah.
we're watching TV and we're like, oh, I had that idea, but we
Hmm.
never act on it. But for me in this moment, I chose to act. And that's because the story I told myself was different. And then I chose to live that story. And so, I'll definitely will get into all the storytelling beats of how to scale and grow a business. But
Yes.
I always tell people the most important story you'll ever tell is the story that you tell yourself. And once you start telling yourself a new story about what's possible for you, what's possible for your organization, your business, your brand, all of a sudden everything else follows.
That is so true. It is so important what we are constantly feeding our minds.
Yes,
What we truly believe. Like you can even say one thing and believe something different, but what your beliefs are just gonna expose themselves.
absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. So listen, you sometimes you gotta fake it till you make it. You got to lie and tell yourself, look, I can do this. I believe in myself. It's going to work out. And you like, this ain't going to work out. But if you keep telling yourself, it probably will work
You
out.
find ways. I think what it is, it's the self-fulfilling prophecy. Once you tell yourself you can do
Yeah,
something, you start finding ways to do it. Even
absolutely.
your mind just keeps working at it until it figures out a way. So this kind of goes into my next question. I know you've shared a little bit of your story and just the impact of, you know, even what you feed yourself. I'm taking notes, by the way. But my next question for you is affiliations. We did an episode a while back on, just smart business tips. And when I heard your story, I realized, it wasn't just even the importance of storytelling, but it was the importance of using your story to advance your business and to even get into the right affiliations. Because a lot of us were like,
Absolutely.
oh, I don't want to go there. We're in front of our computers, or, just not, we're kind of like, I could do this by myself. And that's not true. You kind of need to connect to the
Yes.
right network. So how did your story, how did you use your story to connect with the right organizations
Yeah.
to create the right affiliation for your business?
Look, it's all about who you know, right? And that it cannot be underestimated. Like it's
I believe
all
you.
about who you know. And when I got started, I ain't know nobody. Okay, so I didn't know anybody. So I had to build a network from zero. And so when I started this business, we started off in the mall selling at a kiosk, and eventually I applied to get onto Shark Tank. And I get past 40,000
Whoa.
people to the final round, and I get cut. And they tell me I'm not going to be on the show.
Oh
And
my gosh.
so at that moment, I was like, okay, if I can't have those celebrities to invest in my business, I got to go find others. And one of the
Yes.
first networks that I built was a group called Revolt. It's a big conference, a music conference. And you know this story because I shared it with you at the conference we were
Yes.
at. But I went there and I ended up rapping my way into pitching my business through a rap because the pitch competition was closed. And I'm like, look, I just have to make a way out of no way. And so I rapped my way into an opportunity with this organization. And look, it was not easy. I didn't just go there, do the rap, it all worked out.
Did
I
you
go
rap?
there,
Have
I
you
do the
rapped
rap,
before?
I get to the top 5, never rapped before. I've never rapped before. I get to the top 5, then I get disqualified. Then I have to convince the comedian who was on right before me, DC Youngfly, to let me on the stage during his comedy set so I can perform my rap. It was just nuts, okay? But here's the thing.
Wow.
What's so powerful about going to a conference, right? Going into a space where there's going to be people that otherwise you could never reach, who will never respond to your email, who you don't even know their email or their contact information.
Yeah.
You can get in front of the right people, share your story with them, and all of a sudden now you have a true, meaningful connection with someone else. And so when I was at that event, I ended up doing that rap. I ended up meeting people like DJ Khaled. I ended up meeting
Wow.
some senior executives at AT&T who were the sponsors. The Revolt Summit actually ended up inviting me out to LA. They bought a ton of my Flipstik products. Out in LA, I ended up meeting Snoop Dogg. Snoop
Woohoo!
Dogg ended up loving the product. And so all of a sudden, just from taking that one chance, telling myself a story that I can go to a conference for music professionals, rap, which I've never done before, convince them to invest in me and my product via a platform that is not generally the one that I would choose. It allowed me to start to create that network, to meet the right people who could make opportunities. And what would end up happening was one of the judges at the pitch competition at that first event, who I had never pitched in front of, he was
Wow.
actually a casting director for Shark Tank. And so he
Whoa.
ends up hearing from Snoop and from all these people, like, yeah, and then he did this, and then he got on stage, and then he did this thing. And so he ends up reaching out to me and asking me to come and audition to be on the Shark Tank. And by that time, it was basically just a formality. And so without him knowing my story, he never
Mm-hmm.
would have reached out. He never would have told the producers of Shark Tank, this is the guy we need to have on the show. And when you actually
Wow.
go and people look up my episode, they'll see that I come on Shark Tank rapping. And the
I
reason I
saw
come on rapping
that.
is because I actually rap my way into the opportunity in the first place.
And I just want to pick out a few things from that story. One, you did not know how to rap, but you knew that this was the opportunity for you to get in front of the audience that you needed. Even though it
Yeah.
wasn't your first ideal audience, it was still
Mm-mm.
a significantly important audience. So you didn't
Yep.
give up. You went in front of an audience. You did something you had never done before. So, guys, I know we entrepreneurs, we know the deal. It's never easy. Well, maybe sometimes it
No.
is. But a lot of times it's
Rarely.
just us reforming, reshaping, pivoting, just regrouping, trying something new in front of a new audience in
Yeah.
order to get your story out there, never giving up. I mean, I,
Yes.
I know Nathan Holy was here, and Nathan Holy is the CEO of IEDC, the conference where I, for the first time, heard your story, and I was just honestly completely captivated. And he says, his advice to entrepreneurs is to never give up. Like, don't be afraid of failing. And
Absolutely.
so,
You're
guys,
going to fail. If you're not failing, you're not doing anything worth doing. Failing is
wow,
a
I love
part of the
that.
learning process. And I think that, when we're in school, we get taught that failing is bad, right? There's no redemption.
Yes.
The teacher doesn't tell you, great job, you failed. No, that doesn't happen. But the truth is that in life, if you're not taking risks, if you're not taking real chances, then you're not going to fail. And so it's
Hmm.
important for us to realize that, when you talk about, me going and doing something I've never done before, that was the step that I took. But I don't think anyone at the time, if I'd have told them my plan, would have said this is the right step. It was
Yes.
just the next step. And I think that if you just take steps, no matter how crazy they are, if you think they'll work, they could, and it's just important for us to take those steps. And if it doesn't work, you learn something. If it does work, you have a great story to tell.
There's a piece that I don't want our audience to miss, which I know you haven't shared that here yet, but you had you were telling your stories, and Small Biz Catalyst is a podcast for both entrepreneurs and economic development professionals. So I want some of those professionals who did not get to hear your story to know that you had economic development professionals who were supporting you or got a chance to support you in order for this story to run full cycle.
Yeah.
And I won't go much into that, but I just wanted to kind of highlight that a little bit, bring that into shot and all of
Well, I
that.
think it's very important because you mentioned something earlier um, about your network and the people that you know and the people that
Yes.
support you. And the truth is that
Yes.
no one does this alone, right?
Hmm.
That no one's become successful on their own. No matter what they tell you, it didn't happen. Okay, it took a lot of people. And in my case, when it was time for my Shark Tank episode to finally air, it was 2020. It was election season, and I had no money. And here I'm going to have this huge opportunity. I had no inventory. I had no warehouse. I was still operating out my spare bedroom. And if it wasn't for a group called Arch Grants, who had recently won a grant from a $50,000 non-dilutive grant, um,
Wow.
who then rushed me $30,000 literally overnight. And I wasn't supposed to get this money for months and months and months. If it wasn't for them, that opportunity would have came and went, and I wouldn't even have been able to execute on it. And what I didn't know at the time, I'm thinking, okay, this is an accelerator program. That's all I knew about it. What I didn't know was that the Economic Development Organization of St. Louis, as called STL Partnership, they were the organization that wrote the first check for that program to exist, like 9 years before
Wow.
I even came along.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it really opened my eyes to the fact that, wow, sometimes you don't even know all the players that have effects on your life. And the same thing goes for us. We have no idea the things that we're going to do as professionals that will affect other people's lives. It could be in a week, a month, a decade,
That's
10
true.
years, 100 years. We just don't know. And so as I
Yes.
started to look back through all the different events and opportunities that I had, whether it was that Revolt Summit in Atlanta, that
Mm-hmm.
was an economic development project to redevelop a part of the city where they came in for this project, and they repainted this entire outdoor event venue to uplift the neighborhood. There was another opportunity where we were at the BET Awards in
Yeah.
LA, and the Entertainment and Sports Commission had to bring that to LA. There was another time we were at the Super Bowl, and the Sports Commission in Atlanta had to bring the Super Bowl there. Zweebeg Summit, all these different events down in Austin, in Texas, at Afrotech and at South by Southwest, the Tourism Commission, like all these different professionals that try to attract and bring people into their cities.
Yes.
Like that's what made this stuff happen. Even for me, for Shark Tank, because it was COVID. Normally they have a studio in LA, but they had to build a bubble. So they had to work with the city of Las Vegas to build a bubble so they could film the show in like an isolated environment in Las Vegas. And
Wow.
so it's like you just never know behind the scenes that all the different people whose work allows for you to succeed. And that's why I think that everybody's work is so special, but particularly in the economic development field, because there's as I kind of talked about at the conference, right? Like you're the Nick Fury of the Avengers, right? You're the guy
Yes.
who gets Iron Man and gets Thor and helps Spider-Man hone his skills. Like you're the person behind the scenes that brings all these superheroes together in order to push forward a common good. And without that behind the scenes organization happening, nothing ever happens.
That's true. That is so true. And I just want to huge, I mean, years later, Arch Grants, I just want to do just a quick shout out to them for going outside of the norm to make sure you got the money
Breaking the
early.
rules.
Yeah, breaking the rules. And
Yeah.
as economic development professionals, we're always looking for businesses to support, how to help businesses grow, how to, help entrepreneurs thrive. And guys, if you haven't listened to episode 3 about grants, how to write grants that work, please go ahead and listen to that.
Definitely.
But I definitely want to continue with you, Akeem, on you shared some storytelling principles because you weren't just telling your stories, haphazardly. Well, actually, you had a story about that, how you learned to tell your story differently. I want our audience to learn just some of the principles that would help them tell their stories right so that they're connecting with the right organizations, with the right people, in a way that's impactful and meaningful for their business. Share some of your storytelling principles with us.
Yeah, so I developed over the years a framework for how to tell stories. Because for me, honestly, it just came naturally. I just did it.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I had to transfer that skill to employees, I had to figure out, okay, what exactly am I doing? What is making this work? And so we created a framework called 3456, right? 3 stories, 4 mindsets, 5 principles, and 6 audiences to help you tell better stories. And so the first are really about the 3 types of stories that you tell. And you really only need 3 stories. Number 1 is how you got started. This is how you personally got started in whatever it is you're doing. If you're the founder of the organization, it's how you founded it. But if you're an employee within an organization, it's how you got started in your field. It's very personal. And when you can connect with someone on a personal level, it shows the passion of why you do what it is you do. The second type of story is the story of your mission. This is about your organization, your business, your brand. Why is it that your org is the best at what you do? Why do you have an unfair advantage over everyone else? What makes you special? What makes you tick? What makes you different? That is really crucial to getting consumer buy-in, to getting investor buy-in, to winning those grant competitions, is people understand your mission. But to me, the most important story that you tell for any organization is always the story of your customers. And the reason customers are so important is when we get into like the principles, we talk about how do you create this movie trailer moment? How do you put people in the feeling, in the emotion, in the moment that someone else was in? And you do that through telling other people's stories, not your own. And so if you can talk about your constituents, the people that you serve, the people that you help, the partners that you have, if you can talk about their experiences, what it was like for them before they met you, before they got involved with your organization, before they bought your product or service, what it was like during that engagement, what it was like afterwards, how you made that transformative change in them through their partnership with you, that changes everything for someone when they hear that story. And people like the ups and downs, right? They like to know where people were at, where your customer was at prior to them working to you and where they were afterwards, because they can then see themselves in your customer, and that's huge. And when you talk about, I speak to a lot of sales organizations, and a lot of times people think that, I call it story selling, is about just
Yes.
sales. How do I get customers? How do I bring people in? But it's not actually about that. See, sales actually means to convince someone of the merits of. That's what it means to sell someone. It's not always about exchanging goods or services for cash, right? It's how do you convince someone to the merits of what it is that you're doing? And so that could be winning someone over for a partnership. It could be an investment. It could be, how do you win a grant opportunity? It's always about sharing the merits of what it is that you're doing. And when you tell those three types of stories, it really allows someone to connect with you on a human level. And oftentimes, I think sometimes today we get bogged down in the data and just the facts and the figures of things. And we forget that on the other end of all these decisions is another human being.
That's true.
And we as humans have 10,000 years of oral tradition that is hard coded into the way that we interact with each other. And because of that, when you can connect with someone on a human level through a story, all of a sudden they're interested, they're bought in, they want to hear what you have to say. And oftentimes they want to be a part of that story. They want to help push that narrative. We were at the conference, I shared about how when we aired on Shark Tank, and it was election week, our episode ended up not airing, and it got preempted by the news. It was devastating. But because I shared my story with the head showrunners of Shark Tank, they made a decision that they normally never make. They ended up re-airing our episode, even though I explicitly signed a contract saying that they would not re-air the episode if it got preempted for any reason. But because of the story, they wanted to be a part of that. They wanted to be a part of the journey that I was on and that my company was on. And so they help. And you'll find that happens. I mean, that's really all a grant is about, right? A grant is about someone who says, hey, we got this money here and we want to help further someone else's story. And so when you can really share that with people, I think it gets them bought in. That's why we love movies, right? And we love books.
Yes.
That's why the book The Alchemist for me is one of the best business books on the planet. Nothing to do with business, not really, but it has everything to do with story.
Actually, I just started reading it today. I got the audio version because I'm an audio reader. I mean,
oh yeah, and it's a great audio book.
I could pay per read, but audio is just a more effective way for me to read.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, I gotta read this book. So I put it on my reader list. And today I was like, you know what? This is the book I'm reading today. So I started reading it. It's a 3-hour read.
Short,
yeah. So exactly, very short. But I'm really excited to go through that experience. Now, I don't want our audience to miss out of the things that happen as a result of you telling your stories effectively. You are top 50 consumer product brand in America.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so you'll see. Are we on video? We have video too, right?
Yes, we do.
So sorry for the audio listeners, but so you'll see here I have my Inc. magazine.
Wow.
Yeah, I was very proud of that. We were Inc. 5000, one of the fastest 1,000 growing companies in the country last year, but particularly in the consumer product space, one of the top 50. And from where I came from, we started this business in a mall kiosk. I mean, it was a lot smaller than what it became, but it was really to me it was it's just incredible, and it goes to show you like what's possible when you don't quit, you don't give up. Like I didn't know anything going into it, I still barely know anything, but it just goes to show you like what you can really accomplish, and I believe that that's true for anyone. When you don't give up on something, when you continue to build your story, when you continue to believe in your story, you can make incredible things happen. And now, I get to spend a lot of time traveling around the country and sharing that story and really helping other people build their story as well. And, a lot of times I'm speaking at big conferences like the one we met at, professionals, organizations that are a little bit larger, but actually sometimes, not as often as I like, but sometimes I get to talk to the little minnows, people just starting out,
Yes.
and I love that because, oftentimes when you're just getting started, it seems insurmountable, right? And I
Yes.
remember when I crossed $1 million, in a year. And,
Wow.
I've been working so hard, it kind of just came and went. I didn't think too much about it. And then someone said to me, they were like, Akeem, you know, 30 or 40% of businesses in America fail. He's like, of the businesses that are successful, and I don't know the exact number, let's say it was 5% or 10%. He's like, only 5% of businesses in America ever cross $1 million in revenue in a year. And for me, that was just like, whoa, like I was a college dropout a few years ago. I was making $10 an hour. And here, here I've come, full circle. I mean, it was really incredible. And I remember for me, the moment that just really showed me like what's truly possible is I got invited up to DC. And for those who don't know, Howard University, the school I went to, is located in Washington, DC. And I had lost my scholarship there. It was a very painful place for me. I've been to DC quite a few times for other reasons, but it's always just that memory of like, I had my
Yeah.
greatest failure here. And so I was back there maybe a year ago. And this time I was there for a big gala at the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History. And they
Wow.
had an exhibit on the history of cell phones. And they decided that they wanted to put my story in this exhibit. And, the
Wow.
Smithsonian is the biggest museum in the world. And here I am at this gala. I had my mom with me. And on one side of me is the woman who invented text messages. Okay. Like, she invented text. Okay. And then on the other side of me
Oh,
is the CEO of Qualcomm, one of the largest chip manufacturers in the entire world, maybe the largest chip manufacturer in the world.
wow.
And I'm just looking around and I'm like, I don't think I'm in the right room.
But you
And I
are.
walked up to the curator of the Smithsonian. And I was like, this is just such an honor to be here. I'm so happy to be here. I was like, but I can't help to think like, I'm a little bit outsized by some of the other guests here. And he says to me, Akeem, he's like, we have, millions of students who come to our museum every year. And he's like, if the only stories that we told were, oh, if you invent text messages or if you're the CEO of a huge multi-billion-dollar company, you can be in a museum. He's like, well, we do a disservice to all of those kids out
Hmm.
there that have dreams and goals and inventions locked up inside of him. And he's like, your
Wow.
story is important to tell because your story is one that the people that come into the museum will identify with. And
Wow.
to me, it just was just very powerful that they recognize the power of a story, no matter how big or how small. And for it to be in a city where I had my greatest failure to then be awarded for one of my greatest successes, it was really just a powerful, powerful moment for me. And I just wish for everyone, no matter where you are in life, right? There's always these ups and downs, these highs and lows. And
It's
after lows
true.
comes high, and after
Mhm.
highs come low. But as long as you don't quit in the low season,
Yes.
then you know that you can reach the next peak.
You know what? You rolled us right into my next question. What advice do you have for today's entrepreneur? And I feel like you kind of hinted a little bit on that, but maybe there's a nugget you'd like to share.
Well, you've had many guests before who said, don't give up. That's number one. You can't
Yes.
give up. It's, you know, oftentimes people give up too soon and you want to keep going. So I think that's number one. Number two, I do think that, especially today in today's social media environment, um, there's a narrative that you can just go viral and blow up overnight and it'll just be easy peasy. A celebrity will retweet you and next thing you're a millionaire.
Yeah.
And while that may happen to one or two people, it won't happen to most. And all the people it didn't happen to them. Okay. So I'm not saying it's impossible, I'm just saying it's unlikely. But here's the thing, if you know that when you are trying everything and it's not working out, you won't stop.
Hmm.
And my fear for a lot of people is that we have a mindset today of this instant gratification, that things will just happen quickly for us. And, that if we fail and if things aren't working out and if we can't build a social media following, we can't build an office, we don't have a lot of views, we don't have a lot of sales, then, there's something wrong with me. I can't do it. It's not for me. I'm a failure. And that's not necessarily true. Sometimes it takes time. Like I was just reading about Martha Stewart. Martha Stewart and Snoop were just at the Olympics and having a good old time, right? What I didn't know was that Martha Stewart didn't even have a cookbook out until she was 50 years old. 50. Martha Stewart didn't have a TV show, international bestseller, until she was 60 years old. And so people look at someone like her and just like, oh, yeah, look, she's just larger than life. But this is in the later half of her life that happened. And that's for so many people. You look at somebody like Sam Jackson. Sam Jackson didn't start getting major roles until he was 40, 50 years old. Like that is not, I think oftentimes people don't realize that sometimes for some people's lives, things happen early. For some people's lives, things happen late. But just remember, it's never too late for your season to come, for your story to be rewritten. And so it's like, give it time. And when the timing's right, don't give up. Keep going. Wow. Because I think for me, what caused me to quit my job when I had a good job, and trust me, my parents did not want me to quit because I didn't have no college degree. I'm quitting a good job. But what caused me to go out and chase after my dream is I remember that I didn't want to see myself in 10, 20, 30 years and have any regrets and to live with those regrets and have to look back and be like, man, what could have been, what should have been. And so I just went for it. I went out on my own and took that risk. And so I can't say that everything will happen quickly because it may not, but it will happen when it's supposed to happen.
Akeem, I cannot thank you enough for everything you shared today. And you hit on some things which I don't know if it was intentional. So I do speak, and I used to speak to college and high school students. And one of my topics was it's never too early to take control of your finances. And then when you said it's never too late, I was like, oh my gosh. And then one of the reasons we started Small Biz Catalyst is because majority of small business owners don't go home with a 6-figure salary. Majority.
Yeah.
And those who do don't know how to scale it. And so this was just a platform to share with people how to grow that 6-figure income for yourself, not for the business. The business has to make more for you to be able to take that in. But for you to be able to take that for yourself and then grow that. Yes. So thank you so much. I just want to recap a few things that you said. Don't give up and don't stop. And it's never too late. And you're right. Majority of entrepreneurs really don't hit their success until about 40, even 50. So regardless of your age, even if you're 70, age is not the reason for you to give up on your dreams, on your hopes, on your entrepreneurial journey. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't evaluate, but go ahead. You want to say something?
I was going to say, sometimes you do got to reset. Sometimes what you're doing ain't working, okay?
Yeah.
But I'm a big believer that do it till the wheels fall off. But when they fall off, go get a new car, okay? Like you got it. Sometimes things are not going to work out, and that's okay. But you'll know because you did it until the very end. Yeah. But I just want to share one other thing, and that's that, I think oftentimes when you hear people and you hear about their successes, you don't hear about their failures. And so we sometimes believe that, oh, wow, that person's exceptional. And that's just not true. And I hope people realize through my story, like I got lots of ups and downs. I'm always falling and getting back up. That's just the name of the game. But I remember hearing about, and I didn't know this. I don't know how we didn't learn this in school. But I remember hearing about Abraham Lincoln. And people, here's one of the most iconic, consequential presidents in the history of America, probably in the history of the world. And, all you hear about is him being president. Here's what you don't hear about. What you don't hear about is that before he became president, before he was in Congress, he was a small business owner in Illinois. And he had a shop and he had a co-founder in this shop. The co-founder was the brains behind the operation, okay? And to be honest, Lincoln was riding his coattails. Well, it just so happened that the co-founder dies, and it's just Lincoln, and he got to run this shop, and he runs it right out of business. Okay, it doesn't work out, and he says, "You know what? Well, since the shop didn't work out, I guess I'm just going to run for Congress."
Wow.
And he decides to run for Congress. And the first time he wins. But then he's like, you know what? I'm going to run again. I'm going to get reelected. He don't get reelected. So then he decides, I'm going to run for Senate. And then he gets into the Senate where he's like, okay, I'm in the Senate. I'm going to run for Speaker of the House. Guess what? He doesn't win.
Wow.
So then he decides, I'm going to run for president.
Wow.
And it's like, people don't even realize if he hadn't have failed at the business, if he hadn't have got reelected, if he hadn't have got chosen as the Speaker of the House, he would have never become president. He would have never been able to keep our country together. He would have never freed the slaves. None of that stuff wouldn't have happened without the failures. And so I think it's so important to remember that when you see someone who's incredibly successful, who has a life that's very big, understand that as much as they were shaped by their successes, it was far more shaped by their failures.
So, Akeem, how can our audience connect with you? How can they find you? How would you want them to connect with you besides going right now to buy the Flipstik if they don't have one?
Yeah. So they can all connect with me just by visiting either my website, which is akeemshannon.com, or they can also text me as well. If they text me at 314-789-9005, they can reach me. It's an automated line, so you'll get some nice messaging from me as well too, but I answer every message directly, so they can connect with me there.
Okay, that is very unusual. I actually got your number and I was like, no, it's not possible that this is that I'm gonna get a response. So I didn't, but I'll try. But the number is 314-789-9005, 9005, and it's akeemshannon.com. That's AKEEMSHANNON.com. Check him out. Have him at your speaker. Your audience will be blown away. And then, of course, connect. You didn't tell us that you also get inspirational messages from the text, but I saw that on there.
Yeah, so I'll send some nice inspirational messages to you, send you my Shark Tank video, but you can also connect with me one-on-one. You know, as you mentioned, I do speak quite often. I travel around, speak for all kinds of organizations, and then we also do workshops as well. So I found that a lot of organizations just need a little bit of support to enhance their story. Sometimes it's just a pitch deck. Sometimes they need one-pagers design. Everyone's a little bit different, but we do workshops where we come in and really unpack organization, our business, our brand story, and then really just completely reevaluate it so that it starts to work for you.
Awesome.
And I think for us at Flipstik, that was really the key to our success. We were never the best at, online marketing. We were never the best at in-store marketing, but I could go into a room or I could go on a Zoom and tell a story and really win the buy-in of the person on the other end of the line. And so it just opened up so many doors for us.
So is your workshop the blueprint?
Yes. So we have the 3456 framework, but then the workshop is the blueprint. I always tell people, look, a framework is like, I just need instructions. I can figure it out on my own. I'm good. But sometimes you need somebody to spell it out, write it out for you. Or it's like, okay, here's the blueprint. And so because people ask me like, hey, I need more. We started doing these one-on-one workshops. And honestly, it's been unbelievable. We had this one client and he was in supply chain business, had done well in the past, had been struggling lately. Business was changing. And he had this big opportunity to pitch in front of these Fortune 100 companies. And so I sat down with him and his organization for like 3 hours. Okay. And they just telling me all this stuff, all these customers, everything. And we took those 3 hours and we got it into a 7-minute story. Wow. And he was able to take that 7-minute story and get all these meetings with some of the biggest companies in the world, out in Silicon Valley with the biggest tech companies in the world. I mean, it was really transformative. And even the company, one of the Fortune 500s that he was working with that invited him to do this pitch, even they were like, he's terrible at stories, but this is unbelievable. And they were just so excited about it, even though they knew the story because he was there, he was one of their contractors.
Wow.
And so for me, it was just very exciting because here's an organization that was a great organization that did great work, but they just didn't know how to share it. They didn't know how to tell someone the work that they would do, the capabilities that they have. And so whenever I can come into an organization and really help them enhance that story to live up to the work or the service or the product that they're doing, to me, that's just so exciting. I love it. I absolutely love it. So people can feel free to reach out, if they have a business or brand, they have a great product or service, but, they may just need a little bit of help getting the pitch down, presentations right, that elevator pitch, whatever it may be, they can feel free to reach out on the website or through text as well.
Thank you so much. Again, if you want the blueprint, you want to take your business to the next level using the storytelling blueprint by Akeem Shannon, you need to contact him at akeemshannon.com. That's AKEEMSHANNON.com. And also 314-789-9005. Oh, and get the Flipstik. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, get your
definitely.
Flipstik.
I love that you put in the QR code on the video. So if you're watching by video, you get the QR code as well. Thank you so much, Akeem. It's been a delight just chatting with you, and I'm so honored to have you as a guest on the Small Biz Catalyst.
Well, I'm honored to be a guest. Thanks for having me.
Have a great day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.